streaming. Here is the new link to YouTube. Same deal. All right, see you guys there, and let me know if you can hear me. Oh shit, Alan, stop. You're creeping me the fuck out, dude. Why? Why the fuck are you jumping so hard on this shit? It's fucking creeping me out, bro. Why the fuck are you jumping so hard on this shit? Oh shit. Alright, so now... Why the fuck are you jumping so hard on this shit? Alright, you guys should see me and hear me right now. Please let me know if that's the case. Looks like some people are still getting into Zoom. What's up, Evan? We are on YouTube. Link is in the chat right now. All right. We hear you, and you should see me as well. So I'm going to hope for that too. All right. Both. You valid. Thank you, Alan. On top of his shit. Just also make sure that if you are on Zoom, just keep yourself muted so that we don't hear wind, people's relationship issues, people cooking. You guys know the deal. All right, here we go. Let's dive in to a couple of things that I wanted to go over in Pro Tools. The first thing is this thing called Beat Detective that I want to go into. It's an interesting way to actually start. Let's dive in to a couple of things. Playing around with drums. Again, please mute yourself on Zoom. So, to do that, I'm going to go back to our favorite session. Is somebody not muted on Zoom? Please make sure you're muted on Zoom. Shit will be really distracting throughout the whole class, so please be careful. All right. And yeah, if you need to leave Zoom, just leave Zoom and stay on YouTube, right? So, I'm going to go ahead and find that session called Sharp Hand Joe, right? This is the drum session that we were trying out the other day, yesterday, right? So, if you guys recall, Sharp Hand Joe is our favorite drummer because he sounds like this. Right? Super on time. I'm being sarcastic, obviously. He's very, very off time. And our goal was to try to fix it. Now, we did go over one method of doing that, and that was this process called elastic audio, right? And we did get somewhere with it, but the problem is there's more than one way, or rather not the problem, but the thing is that we can do it more than one way. There is another way where you can get drums way tighter, right? And that way is called Beat Detective. It's a very common technique used in Pro Tools for solving your beat problems, right? So here you go. We start off with this session. We got terrible drums. Like very, very jumpy off time. And if you don't believe me, we'll zoom in and you see this line is the grid. And you see that his kick drum is off, his hi-hat's off, his snare is early, hi-hat's late, kick is late, hi-hat late, right? So you get the idea, right? So now I want to show you a different way of editing drums, right? First thing I'm going to do in order to make this work is I'm going to choose which components of the drums I want quantized, right? And we already know this. I want to make sure that the kick drum, the snare drum, and the hi-hats are quantized, meaning on the grid, just for this particular purpose, right? So those are going to be locked to the grid. But I also want to make sure that while these lock into the grid, I want to make sure the entire rest of the drums also lock in relatively to that, right? So if this kick drum needs to move by this much, I need everything to move by that much, right? To stay on the grid. So this is where the idea of Beat Detective comes in, or this is one way that you can use Beat Detective to actually fix your drums, right? Beat Detective in general is a cool tool, but this is a cool way to actually make use of it. And you guys are hearing the drums, right? I probably should have asked you that, but I assume you are. That's right, I probably should have asked you that, but I assume you are. All right. Okay, looks like you are. So here we go. The first thing I'm going to do is the 3 tracks that I want to make sure are quantized, I'm going to group them. You guys remember how to do grouping, right? Command G, not subgrouping, that's something else. Just grouping. I'm going to group these kick, snare, hats into a group. And you can see on the bottom left that I have enabled a track group, right? These are mix edit groups that you can use to edit multiple tracks at a time, or even mix multiple tracks at a time. Very, very useful tool, right? So I'm going to group those, and then here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to highlight the first 4 bars, right? I do that by using the selector tool, clicking, and then selecting 4 bars. Now what I'm doing is, as I'm dragging this across, I'm looking at this length over here, and this will tell me how many bars, how many beats, and how many ticks are actually going into my selection, right? And I want to start right at the top of bar 2. Why? Because that's where the drums start. That's where the kick drum is. So I select, and now what I can do is go up to Event and go to this little thing called Beat Detective, all right? Now, in Beat Detective, you've got a couple of options, but the one that I'm more interested in, or the ones that I am most interested in, are clip separation, clip conform, and edit smoothing, right? So I'm going to focus on these 3. For clip separation, the first thing I'm going to do is I want to make sure that Beat Detective, the actual app, is aware of the selection that I've made. Even though I've highlighted it, what I have to do is, once Beat Detective is open, I need to go in here and choose Capture Selection. So you see how right now it says start bar is bar 6 and end bar is 10? Well, that's not correct, because my start bar should be bar 2 and my end bar should be bar 6. But if I hit Capture Selection, this will match this. 1, 2, 3, there you go. Bar 2 to bar 6, bar 2 to bar 6. Next, I'm going to choose what kind of notes are contained within the selection. Now, we've already went through this the other day, but there are 8th notes that are occurring within this selection, right? The hi-hats are all 8th notes, and I do want them pretty tight as well. The kick and snare are on the quarter notes, but they also land on certain 8th notes. So 8th notes is the smallest division that I want to be careful with, right? So quarter notes are, remember, this is quarter note, this is quarter note, this is quarter note, but in between are the 8th notes, right? So I want to make sure that I'm choosing 8th notes as my division, right? So 8th notes, no triplets, so that's fine. And then the next thing I'm going to do is going to come to this next section over here under the detection section and hit Analyze. Once I hit Analyze and increase the sensitivity of the analysis, you'll see a bunch of purple lines show up. As I increase the sensitivity, more purple lines show up until every single hi-hat and 8th note is selected, right? Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold Shift and press the colon button to move the selection down. Remember, these purple lines are only detecting the transients that I had within the selection, and as I move them down, they're staying exactly the same position-wise. They're not detecting new transients, right? It's pretty cool. So now you've got these purple lines that are detecting the transients of the 3 tracks that I wanted to have quantized, but I want to quantize everything else relative to that Hence, I move the entire selection down. Next, I'm going to click on this thing called Separate. This is going to split the track or the clips at all those purple lines. So 1, 2, 3. So now they're all split at those points. They're all individual clips now. Next, I go to Conform. All right. Then I can hit on Conform over here. You see how they moved a little bit? I'll show you one more time. So there's the split. Here's the grid. There's the split. I hit Conform. Boom. Right? So it's conformed all the splits to the grid. But there's all this gap in between, right? There's space in between, so it's going to sound super choppy. Right? There's dips in the audio. And for that reason, you go to your Edit Smoothing, and this will allow you to fill up those gaps and create crossfades of the length of your choosing. So if you watch this, this is going to get filled up, and there's going to be a crossfade in 1, 2, 3, right? See that? Now we got some tight drums. Pretty cool, right? Now again, you have to be careful and make sure that you don't make any errors. And as you can see, when you zoom in at the very end, there's a little bit of a glitch. So what you have to do is you have to select all of these, and you can do that same method, right? And then move them to where you don't hear that little glitch. You can kind of still hear it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to group all the drums in their own group too, so that I don't have to keep selecting all of them. Where's the glitch? Right here. You hear it in the hi-hats, right? And I might have to increase the boom. You can kind of hear it, but it's much better. You get the idea. You don't want to hear this, right? You don't want to hear that. That's better. There you go. Way tighter, right? So that's how you go about it. So I'm going to deselect the drum group over here in the corner, the bottom left corner. So now my edits are only within the top 3 tracks, right? So you can enable and disable groups as you need it. When this is on, the entire drums get selected, but when it's off, only the 3 that I want to are selected. Everything else is just individual selections. So let's do that one more time, right? You choose your selection. So I'm going to choose 4 bars, right? I also want to actually get those toms in as well. So I'm going to select those as well. So choose the ones that you want to quantize. Beat Detective. We're not doing that one. Beat Detective. First thing I'm going to do is capture selection. Right now we're going from bar 6 to bar 10. So bar 6 to bar 10. This contains eighth notes. Hit Analyze. You can see that it analyzes everything. Hold Shift. Move the selection down to the other tracks. Separate. Go to Conform. Click on Conform. Go to Edit Smoothing. Click on Edit Smoothing. Right? So you can see how you can edit. This is usually the technique that I use to edit drums. I know I told you that elastic audio is one way to do it, but personally I find that even though this is a little bit different, I find it more natural, and also it's a really cool way because you can also account for room overheads and room microphones as well. Very, very useful, right? Cool. All right, so now let's go into some other stuff in Pro Tools. Just a quick... I don't know if I keep unplugging my MIDI. I keep unplugging my MIDI. So I don't know if this is actually going to detect or not, but we'll find out. Let's see. Just fine. Let's just go to the... don't save. Because I don't really need to do anything with it. So just want to make sure that I'm actually getting some MIDI data. If not, I'm not going to worry about it. Okay, so we are getting MIDI. So you guys remember that in order to add MIDI, you have to create a stereo instrument track, right? Now, actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to one other thing because we did touch on elastic audio, and I just want to cover one last thing with that, then I'll come back to this one. And this might be the last time you guys hear this. Well, no, it's not going to be the last time you hear this just fine thing, unfortunately. Or fortunately, depending on... Yeah, Ty's already ready. So real quick, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Right. So just a really quick recap of elastic audio because we might as well just touch on this, right? So elastic audio, again, allows you to separate pitch from speed. So you might be wondering that whenever you created a stereo instrument track, remember we were talking about MIDI, whenever you created it, you always created it in ticks, right? So, for example, you put your instrument on. Let's just say something simple. Actually, I'm just going to stick with whatever we guys know as this. All right. And let's choose something like a... Yeah, fine, piano. Natural grand piano. Okay. So, let's just record something real quick. We already know how to do this. Hit record. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now, I wish I could play that better. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so we got piano, and we got an audio track, right? I'm just going to quantize it real quick, and remember to do that, you go to your clip, use the grabber tool to double click, and that opens up the piano roll. You can see here's where you can change your notes, you can change your velocity, right? And you can also change your position. So you can quantize stuff too. Now, if you want to quantize the whole thing, you can just select it, go to Event, Event Operations, Quantize, or Option 0 on the numeric pad. And I'm playing quarter notes, so I can just quantize the quarter notes. And once I hit apply, it'll all move to the grid. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And I don't really need that last one. As cool as that was, don't need it. So, there you go. You've got MIDI and audio, 2 clips. One of them is on an audio track, a sample-based audio track. The other one is on a tick-based tick track. So what happens if I change this tempo from 120 to 180? See that? See how this one moved, this one didn't? That's because tick-based tracks will move based on the bars and beats, relative to the bars and beats of the session, whereas audio sample-based tracks will not do that. Also, because it's MIDI, the speed will go up, but the audio track won't. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? Exactly. Sample track. There you go. Right. Tick-based tracks will move, whereas sample-based tracks only move relative to the absolute time. So look, what's going to happen if I change the audio track from a sample-based track over here to a tick-based track? Now I'm going to change the tempo from 120 to 180. Watch what happens this time. So now you can see that they both start at the same time. They both start at bar 2, beat 1. But the audio track is still the same speed as it was, but the MIDI track has sped up, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Right? Let's go back to 120 again. Now, here's where the fun stuff comes in. If I wanted to change both of these, then I would make sure that the audio track is tick-based. I would apply an elastic audio algorithm by clicking to the right, setting it to monophonic. Now, if I change it to 180, there you go. They're exactly the same. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And you can do this at whatever tempo. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So this is where the practicality of elastic audio comes in. And again, don't push it too far because it has its limitations, but it's also pretty cool when you need to. And hopefully seeing this difference makes you understand, how they look side by side. Because before I was only able to do audio track sample based, but now you can see MIDI and audio tracks and see how they work relative based on samples and ticks, right? Pretty amazing if you think about it. So now I want to teach you one other thing about MIDI tracks, which is really cool, right? So right here we have a instrument. Let's call it a G piano, right? And it's on an instrument track, and the MIDI data is triggering the natural piano sound, right? I also told you about when you go to the top right, click on the arrow and go into your MIDI effects. You can see a couple of MIDI effects, the most important one being this thing called Midi Merge. So right now, if I try to record over this piano MIDI clip, it's going to overwrite. Right? It'll overwrite everything that I did. So I'm going to undo that. Now, if I click on Midi Merge, watch what happens when I record. Okay, that sounded bad, but you get the idea. It overwrites it. I thought that would work, but it didn't. So you can see that it kept the original recording and let me overwrite with my own. So this is a cool way where you can make layers, right? Man, I just can't get this right. I would change that one note. Yeah, there you go. I'm sorry. I'm just obsessing over this stupid thing. Okay, this is ridiculous. I'm not going to obsess over this thing. But anyway, you get the idea. Midi Merge is a cool way where you can add layers, right? So another example is if you just wrote basic chords. Right? You got basic chords, but with Midi Merge, you can add more. So now you get everything in one MIDI clip. That way you don't have to play it on your own. This is really good for drums and stuff, right? So you got your grand piano, you have your MIDI clip, you can mess with velocities and time and all that stuff and add notes, blah, 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 blah. Now here's one thing. A lot of instruments, specifically virtual instruments, are pretty heavy on computer processors, right? So they take up a lot of space in terms of processing power. So a very common thing to do is actually to not use an instrument track, a MIDI track when you're mixing down, but actually bounce this to an audio clip of itself, right? Or bounce the audio version of this. But Pro Tools has this really easy way to do it. So this is a stereo instrument track. If I create a stereo audio track, right? And then I just drag this down, check it out. It automatically renders out a version, an audio version of your piano. So I'm going to solo this. It's going to sound exactly the same. Right? So that way, you don't even need to have this track and this whole heavy plugin anymore. This is really cool if you go to SAE or, you know, a studio or some place where like you find a really cool instrument sound, you record this MIDI thing, but you're like, oh my God, I don't have this at home. Well, just drag it onto a new track. Then the original instrument track, you can just either mute it or you can right click and make it inactive. So that way it's just not taking up any processing space, or you can even hide it and make it inactive, right? That way it's in the track list over here if you ever need to find it. And you do that by just clicking on the little dot, right? There it is. And then you just right click and make active again if you need to. But otherwise, you can just right click, hide and make it inactive. And now you have the audio file that you want. So really, really efficient way to keep instruments under control when you start to get too many instrument tracks going into a track, or when you find an instrument but you're in the wrong studio, you don't have it at home and you'd like to keep it, right? Very, very useful. It's also better than just, bouncing it out as well, because you can literally do it in 2 seconds, right? Really, really efficient. So now let's talk about some other cool things. So, not to drill this home, unless I have a... No, let's do this one. We're going to have to drill this home, fuck it. All right, so our favorite song...
Skin, red lips dripping from your grin. Looks like I gotta learn a little more. Love it temporarily, in love trying to get you some.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about vocals, right? Now this is something that you guys might know already, but vocals are really, really hard to get super tight and super under control, right? And the biggest thing that people worry about is the pitch of the vocal, because without having a solid pitch, it kind of sounds amateur-ish if you don't do it correctly. And it also sounds like, it doesn't scream confidence. And it's a big issue. So that's why people take hours and hours to make sure that the vocal takes are correct, right? And the one thing that I should mention is that there's so many things to think about when you're capturing vocals, right? Everybody thinks like you hit record, you say a bunch of shit, and then it's over. No, like if you want to get a great vocal performance, you need to fucking get the story out of this person, get the emotion out of this person. And that's not easy for everybody. Some people, they can access it like that, but others, you have to kind of draw it out of them. And this is as you get more reputation as a producer, mixer, and all that stuff, or engineer. People will trust you to get that shit out of them. But getting that emotion out of a vocalist is so important. I've mentioned this before, but there's a lot of things you can fix about vocals, like timing and phrasing and, even stretching if needed. But emotion, you can't fix that, unfortunately, or not yet, right? So getting that raw emotion out of the vocals is very, very important. Also, vocal sessions can go from 3 hours to 5 hours, depending on the vocalist, 6 hours, right? So having that consistent emotional purge is not an easy thing to do. Again, it's only one microphone, one artist, but getting that consistently is very, very hard, right? People either lose energy, they run out of fuel, or because the song is so emotional, they just can't go on, right? It's very, very difficult for them to do that shit. So you kind of got to feel them out and be by their side and kind of guide them through all that. But anyway, I would say the number one thing to always focus on is getting that emotion out of the vocals. Now, we already talked about fixing time and editing issues through either manual editing or Elastic Audio, but we never talked about pitch. And this is something you guys already know, so there's not really much to say about it, but there's two ways that you can affect pitch, right? Two good ways you can do it. Let's just say that. There's the auto-tune way, which you guys already know, but in order to do the auto-tune, you actually have to know the key of the song. Now, I actually don't know the key of this song, so I'm not even going to try to guess, but oh yeah, I don't have that. But anyway, if you go into... Let's see the song, and let's actually make a MIDI, an instrument track right here, and just put some piano on it. I'll try to figure out the pitch, but I really couldn't tell you. I'm not really good at this. There is a software called Mixed in Key that helps you find the key of a song. Oh, yeah, there's another one called Auto Key. I usually use Mixed in Key, but it's not on this computer, right? I think it's on my other system. I have a mobile setup. I have another one on my laptop. I think it's on that, but it's not on this. So, okay.
So I say too much. What?
Okay, that was a total guess. I just hit two keys and...
I say too much. What's on my mind? My mind. Well, I guess the thought of you's just fine. Just fine. So I say too much. What's on my mind? My mind.
So I think it's So I believe it's C sharp major. If somebody's out there who can correct me, definitely correct me. So yeah, I don't have perfect pitch. I was just talking to somebody about this too. So anyway, in order to actually do that, you either need a software like Mixed in Key, or they have to tell you the key of the song, or you need something like perfect pitch, right? But once you figure it out, and again, I don't know if I'm right or wrong, what you can do is, on your vocal track, the first insert, this is very, very important, make sure that the first insert slot goes dedicated to your pitch altering plugins, because the problem is if you put it after EQs and compressors and stuff, it might alter the way it's hearing the pitch, and it'll fuck up your entire pitch correction, right? So make sure it's the first thing on your slot. Now, I believe I have Antares Auto-Tune. I believe it's the real-time one, right? So here you have your Auto-Tune. Again, this is going to make way more sense once you actually play around with it. But just a couple of things, like it actually detects what type of tone is coming in, and there's different settings for that work better for different types of singers, right? So low male, obviously, lower pitch. alto and tenor is kind of the one between soprano. Actually, Hannah will talk to you a lot about this stuff because she's probably been a part of like a choir where you have sections, dedicated sections, right? Now, depending on how you set this tracking up, you can either have it very, very loose in terms of it doesn't pick up everything, and that's really what you want to do if you're going for the more like natural kind of vibe. But if you want to get extreme pitch correction, then you kind of want to get it more choosy, right? Next, you want to choose your key, and I think it's C sharp, and I think it's major, but there's only one way to find out, right?
Pushed out like a rubber band. She already got a master plan, waiting for me to find out what's in store. Yeah. Black leather sticking tight. I guess the thought of you's just fine.
So yeah, I think it's C sharp major or D flat major, same thing, right? Well, pretty much the same thing. So then you've got a couple of different settings. Again, most of this is only going to make sense if you actually try it. But the main things that I want you to think about are retune speed, which basically says how fast do you want the pitch to be tuned. Once it detects an error, how fast do you want it to correct it? Fast, then you get that kind of T-Pain sound.
I guess the thought of you's just fine.
Right? And slow, it's way more natural, but it might miss a couple of keys, right? Let's just turn it super slow.
I guess the thought of you's just fine.
F minor. All right, so we're going to try F minor. I'm going to trust you, Hannah.
Too much was on my mind. My mind. So
Yeah, it's technically a minor key, right? So F minor.
Too much was on my mind. My mind.
Yeah, it might be F minor. So Hannah might be right about that pitch. But either way, you set your settings to whatever it might be. Wow, that's crazy coincidence that D flat major, or sorry, C sharp major worked. And I think it might be because most of the notes are very similar, but I think there's one note or a couple of notes that are out. So very, very lucky in that regard, right? Now you can also choose different settings in the auto tune. But the retune speed is definitely the most commonly thing that's messed around with, right? Now, if you wanted to get a little bit more of that vibrato kind of sound out of your vocals, there is a knob here called natural vibrato. I'm not a big fan of it, but just listen to what it sounds like.
Too much was on my mind. My mind. So I guess the thought of you's just fine. Just fine, babe.
Yeah, see, I'm not a big fan of the natural vibrato. If you dial it in subtly, you can actually try to, get a little bit more of, I got the keys, right? So if you do dial it in subtly, it can be kind of cool.
Too much was on my mind.
Right? It's not bad, but I mean, I can kind of hear the auto-tune working, and I'm not a big fan of it, especially for this kind of sound, right? So it's not that you change one thing and that fixes everything. Every one of these is kind of connected to each other, right? Like the flex tune is connected to the retune, the natural, and even the humanizer, which is more for like sustained notes, right? So if we find like a sustain, like if we try to do this,
thought of you's just fine.
So humanize is like, for those longer sustained notes, sometimes that the auto tune can get really crazy because it's trying to, sustaining a pitch in vocals is already a hard thing to do. And if there's, if there's a lot of correction that has to be done, sometimes the auto tune can go kind of crazy. So humanize is a good way to kind of smoothing those ones out, right? Now, you can also see that there are notes indicated here for the scale, F minor, right? Now, you can actually choose for the auto-tune to either bypass them or even completely remove them from the actual vocal, right? That's if you want to get kind of crazy. So let's just do this.
Thought of you's just fine.
This is
Just fine, babe. So I say too much what's on my mind.
so you can't really hear it.
Oh,
there.
And I say,
It's subtle, but you can tell how it's not doing a good job on the ones that we. I wish there was an emoji for vibrato. Yeah, actually, how come nobody's made that, right? So yeah, there you go. Autotune is now, as you can see, that there's a whole other section of autotune that you can actually play around with the vibrato in, but I'm not going to get into that. There's all these different ways where you can modify the type of vibrato that's happening just by changing the formants and stuff like that, but I'm not going to get into all that. What I do want to get into instead, because autotune is a little bit more known to you guys, I want to get into this other thing called Melodyne, which I think is much more accurate in terms of pitch correction, right? So again, the very first insert I want to make sure is my pitch correction. So now let's go find in a bad pitch.
black leather sticking to your skin, red lips dripping from your grin. Looks like I gotta learn a little more. Stretched out like a rubber band, she already got a master plan.
So let's do the first two lines because it's a little off, right? So in order to use Melodyne, the way it works is it's not like a plugin that you can just apply and then it does it automatically. That's not how it works. You actually have to print the audio or write the audio into Melodyne's actual interface. And you do that by clicking on the transfer button up here. And then you hit play.
Stretched out like a rubber band, she already got
And you
a
can see that it's
master
writing it
plan.
into
Waiting for me to find out what's
Melodyne.
in store.
And when I hit stop, you see how it actually detects all the different pitches for all the vocals? That's the kind of cool thing about Melodyne, right? Now, I don't think they have Melodyne at school, but anyway, it's good to know, right? So here's what you can do. You can actually go in and change individual pitches to make stuff sound better.
Stretched out like a rubber band, stretched out like a rubber band.
So if you wanted to... I'm just going to do something crazy so that you can actually hear it.
Rubber, stretched out like a rubber band.
Right? You can get really crazy with it.
She already got a master plan. She already got a master plan. She already got a master plan. She already got a master plan.
Master.
She already got a master plan. She already got a master plan. She already got a master plan. She already got a master plan.
So yeah, you find the pitch.
She already got a master plan.
Now you can do it like that just by dragging stuff all up and down,
She already got a master.
right? Now here's the problem. If you do it too far,
She already
sounds really fucking weird.
got a master.
Now, I mean, weird in the sense it sounds very inaccurate to the original source, right? You're affecting it in a weird way. So if you did like super extreme moves,
She already got a master plan.
right? It sounds really weird. But this is perfect for when you want to do subtle tuning. This is what almost every vocalist uses in terms of just like, it's just like fine-tuning vocals. You can put auto-tune on, but auto-tune tends towards making vocals sound way too robotic and unnatural. Not the T-Pain thing, but even just having everything super solid on pitch, it's not natural. And you know, most of the time you can hear it working, especially in between the vocals when you do like a right? When you do those jumps, you can really hear the auto-tune work. But Melodyne is really cool because it can actually fix individual notes, right? And there's also a bunch of other features, right? If you click on a note, let's say...
What's in store? What's in store?
You can actually go up to this little button over here, and this is a pitch centering tool that allows you to, first of all, put the pitch in the actual note that it's supposed to be in based on a percentage, but also if you have a vibrato that's going all kinds of places, this will actually help refine it and get it a little tighter.
What's in store?
See how the vibrato is way less now? That's kind of some features of a Melodyne that you can use. And it's so weird that it's asking me to snap to B minor. Well, I guess F minor, B flat minor? That's not relative. Anyway. But here's the thing that kind of gets annoying about Melodyne, right? And this is kind of what I wanted to show you guys, is that suppose I fixed my pitch over here and then I'm like, oh my God, I have to make an edit with these 3 lines. Watch what happens. Just to show you, I'm just going to delete these 3 lines, but look what happens. It'll still play the tuned vocals because the track is still reading from the Melodyne plugin. Because remember, you transferred it. Check it out. Nothing here.
Stretched out like a rubber band.
Right?
She already got a master plan.
So sometimes
Waiting for me to find.
you'll be like, whoa, hold on a second. There's nothing here. How the fuck is it doing that? And it's because it's still reading the Melodyne transfer that you had. So, oh yeah, flex pitch. Yeah. Flex pitch. Even Autotune has like a manual tune now, right? So this is what I would consider manual tuning. There's auto tuning and manual tuning, and this comes under auto tuning. I'm sorry, manual tuning, right? So this is a big problem because if you make any kind of edit over here, right, it's not going to copy over.
Like a rubber band. She already got a master plan.
Right? Because it's reading from this guy. And what's even worse is if you get rid of something, it won't
Stretched out like a
play
rubber
it.
band. Plan.
Right? It's always reading from the actual Melodyne software. So this is fine in most cases where you can just keep Melodyne on, but if you're trying to conserve processing power and you're trying to be able to still edit things, it becomes quite the issue, right? So I'm going to show you 2 ways that you can get around this or actually even fix it. So the first thing I want to show you is when you have plugins that you don't really need to keep altering, there's a cool thing you can do called freezing tracks, right? So for example, if this vocal, right, was fully tuned, like Melodyne, I went through the whole song and tuned it up, right? And, I'm EQ, I'm super happy with the EQ and the compression. I'm like, this is it. I'm fucking solid with this. What I could do is I can actually freeze the track, this track over here. I can freeze the track, and that way the processing power of the plugins is removed, like it's greatly reduced, and the computer won't even process that in real time. It kind of it's like a semi-commit, right? So on the track right here, you see above your sample-based track selector, there's a little snowflake, right? This is how you freeze tracks. So watch what happens when I click on this. It's rendering out the track and freezing all the plugins. See, all the inserts have a little snowflake next to them, right? And that's because it's now not using any processing power to go through the plugins, but it still sounds like the same vocals.
Stretched out like a rubber band. She
Right?
already got a master plan.
So you're saving processing by freezing tracks, right? If I unfreeze it, I just want to show you the original vocals,
Stretched out like a rubber band.
right? Those are the original vocals.
She already got a master plan. Waiting for me to find out what's in store.
And these are the new vocals, right? And if you freeze the track, it renders out a version of the vocal passing through all those plugins. And now you can save processing power, right? But you can't go in and alter the plugins. You've kind of like said, hey, I'm happy with it. I don't really need to go in and alter them. But you do save on processing power. Another thing, you can't edit. Like I'm hitting delete right now. I can't delete anything, right? I can't fade in, fade out. I can't cut, nothing. You have, again, frozen this track essentially. Great way to save on processing power, but you have to be sure that that's what you want to do. Well, you have to be semi-sure, right? Because you can always just say, oh man, I need to make an edit. I can unfreeze the track, go in, make whatever edit that you want, and then go back to freezing the track. Again, very, very efficient way of saving processing power. All right. Now, another cool thing is that you don't have to freeze the entire track. You can freeze individual plugins at a time, right? Now, this happens serially. So when I right click on the Melodyne, I can say freeze up to this point, up to this insert. So when I click on that, the exact same thing happens, right? It renders out a version of the track, but I'm only freezing the Melodyne plugin. So this is perfect when you have heavy plugins like Melodyne, Auto-Tune, and even certain instrument tracks, right? When you have heavy plugins, you can freeze them, and that way you're saving on processing power, but then you can still fuck around with the EQ, right? Right? You can still fuck around with the EQ as much as you want, and the compressor, right? And you can do this serially till the very end. So you can say, you know what? I only want the first two. So for example, if I said I want to freeze Melodyne and the EQ, right click on the EQ, freeze up to this insert, and then the first two get frozen, right? And if you want to do all of them, you just hit this little freeze button on the actual track. Pretty cool, right? Now, the other thing you can do instead of freezing, as cool as freezing is because you save on processing power, you can't edit the tracks at all, right? So what you can do is you can right click, and instead of freeze, you can go to commit. Now, when you go to commit, it'll ask you, okay, what do you want to commit? The selected track, that's this one right here. Obviously, you can choose a selection if you want to. Then, if you had multiple clips, you can ask to consolidate, even though it default will. What do you want to commit? I want to copy the sends, if I had any sends for the reverbs and stuff, which I think I do, right? Oh, I don't have any reverbs on this? Cool. Well, it would do that too. It would copy the sends over, but I'll show you that in a second. And then where do you want to actually put this track? This track with all the plugins on it, I want to hide it and make it inactive, right? The source track. And I want to insert the new track after this one. So hit OK. It bounces out a new track. And there you go. You have vocals.cm. The CM stands for commit. Right there. So you see that there's no plugins here, but it sounds the same.
Stretched out like a rubber band.
Right?
She already got a master plan.
Because what happened was Pro Tools ran the clip through all the processing, all the tuning, and bounced out a new version, put it on a new track, and called it same track.commit. So now you can go in and start editing and all that stuff. And this is really for when you're ready to commit your sound. If you're like, okay, these are my vocal sounds, I'm sure, let's do it, right? Now, again, if for some reason you're like, oh my God, I shouldn't have done that, you can always go back to your track list, and right above where this track was is the same track without the .cm. You can just activate or unhide it, activate it, and you can go back to the actual track. Now, I'm just going to delete this for now, but you can always get back to it if you need to. Again, this is all about saving processing power, right? So just going to rename it vocals. So that's a cool way to do it. You can commit, but remember with commit, it's different than freezing because you're actually rendering a whole new file out, right? Now, what you can do is you can also right click, say I only want to commit Melodyne and the EQ. You can right click, and instead of freeze up to this track, you could say commit up to this insert, right? And now, same deal. Hit OK. Boom. Same thing. Vocals.commit. You see that the compressor and limiter stayed, but the first two inserts are gone because the vocals passed through that, processed it, and put it on a new track, right?
Do for me, then force me not to run.
And the old one is right here in the top corner in the hidden tracks, right? And you can always view that if you need to. So again, these are all really cool ways that you can save processing power, right? Again, with MIDI,
Black leather sticking to your skin.
right? If you have MIDI data, same deal. If you want to right click, you can say freeze, which basically turns it into a audio file, but you can still unfreeze it whenever you want. Right? Same deal. And if you want to unfreeze, you see that this little snowflake is highlighted. You just click on it and it unfreezes. Same deal. You can also commit, and that actually is the same as basically dragging it down. But there you go. Right? That's committing is essentially the same as what I already showed you, right? Which is if you have a MIDI track over here and you create a stereo audio track, you can just drag it down and it'll automatically bounce it.
Black leather sticking to your skin.
Right? There you go. Now what's interesting is if I add some sort of EQ on this,
Black leather sticking to your.
and I drag this down, listen to what happens. It commits the entire track, right? So it's kind of cool. And it's, again, a good way to save up on session space, processing space. Again, this is not going to matter for the sessions that you're doing because your sessions are pretty small, and I don't think you're going to be using a lot of plugins, but I think I showed you guys an example of like a huge ass session, right? In those kinds of cases, it makes sense to actually commit to certain decisions, right? Sometimes it's not a good thing to always be able to go back and fix whatever the hell you want to fix, right? Sometimes you do want to commit and go all in and just trust that you will actually solve the problem, right? Trust in your instincts. But again, that only comes with experience, and you know, you guys will get that over time. All right. So yeah, that's basically, I believe, everything I wanted to go through. So let's go back to Zoom. Wow, I can't believe I finished all that.